Hi, I'm the daughter no one expected to return home. On Christmas Eve, my own mother slammed the door in my face and said, "You don't belong here anymore." But that wasn't the worst part. My rich husband arrived minutes later holding a folder that tore my family's lies wide open. For years, they erased my name from everything: inheritance, history, even my father's last wishes. But when I opened Grandpa's hidden message, it changed everything. What he left behind destroyed their story, and forced everyone into the courtroom. But you won't believe who showed up or what they said under oath. The snow crunched beneath my boots as I walked up the narrow path to Mom's house. The porch light flickered with the same stubborn hesitation I remembered from years ago. In the windows, warm light and faint laughter spilled out like a memory that didn't belong to me anymore. My breath formed slow clouds in the frozen air, and every step felt heavier than the last. I could smell pine, maybe from the wreath she always hung, and something sweet, like cinnamon rolls. All the usual Christmas things. But none of it felt usual. The last time I stood on this porch, I was 19. I'd said something that couldn't be unsaid, and she'd answered with the sound of a door slammed so hard, it lived inside my chest for years. When she texted 2 days ago, just 5 words, "If you want to come," I didn't know if it was a peace offering or a trap. But I showed up. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that time would have softened her edges. Maybe she'd see I wasn't the same girl she slammed the door on. But mostly, I hoped she'd just open it. I raised my hand and knocked. Once, twice. Footsteps. Muffled, slow. Then the door creaked open just a few inches. She was there, Verlin. My mother, wrapped in a faded blue sweater, holding a red ceramic coffee mug. Her eyes didn't scan me. They didn't even pretend to welcome me. She stared through me like I was a ghost she didn't believe in. "You think showing up changes what you did?" That was all she said. Then the door slammed again. Sharp, clean, familiar. The mug slipped from her hand, or maybe she let it go. It shattered on the concrete beside my boots. White porcelain mixed with dark coffee and the bright red shards of ceramic. And for a second, it felt like it was my chest that cracked open. I didn't move, not yet. My fingers had gone stiff from the cold, or from standing too still. Maybe both. A black SUV pulled up, the tires crunching the same snow I had walked over. The engine hummed smooth and low. The passenger door opened first, and he stepped out. Benedict, my husband. He didn't rush to me. Didn't ask what happened. He just looked at me the way he always does when I'm trying to hold it together. "You don't have to beg for a seat at a table that was never yours," he said, voice steady, quiet. And just like that, the wind didn't feel as sharp anymore. Not because it stopped hurting, but because someone saw that it did. I could see her silhouette through the curtain. Verlin, watching, maybe recognizing the logo on the SUV, the tailored coat on his shoulders, the life I'd built without her. But I didn't care what she saw. Not anymore. I stood there a while, not sure what to do with my hands. I didn't cry. I've spent too many years running out of tears for her. I remembered being 15, sitting on the kitchen floor with a bruised knee and a silent mother, hoping she'd ask if I was okay. She never did. The cold didn't bother me. What hurt was that some part of me still believed she'd change her mind. Still hoped she'd open that door again. A different way. Benedict didn't touch me. He just stood close enough that I didn't feel alone. "You don't owe anyone a doorway to walk back through," he said. I nodded, barely. It wasn't strength that made me turn around, it was something else. Clarity, maybe. Sometimes the family you come from blinds you to the one you've built. I'd read that somewhere. Maybe it was true. I took a deep breath and turned back toward the SUV. The cold air bit at my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. I was done asking for love that cost me too much. Then, just as I reached the last step, a soft sound behind me. A window sliding open. "Don't forget your gift," she said. Her voice wasn't sharp anymore. Just tired. I turned. On the porch, beside the broken mug, was a brown paper bag. Folded at the top, no name written, but it was mine. I could feel it. Benedict didn't say a word. His eyes followed mine. I hesitated. Because that's what you do when ghosts hand you something. You wonder if it's real. You wonder if it's safe. And then I stepped forward. The paper bag sat heavy in my lap the whole ride home. I didn't open it. Not at first. Just held it, stared out the window, watched the snow collect on the edges of the glass like ash from a fire I couldn't remember putting out. Benedict didn't say much. He adjusted the heat, turned the radio down when some jazzy Christmas song came on, then left it playing low. Too cheerful for the mood. I could tell he wanted to ask what was in the bag, but he didn't. He gave me space the way only someone who's seen your raw edges does. My reflection in the window didn't look sad, exactly. Just older. Like I'd walked into a memory hoping to find something soft and came out holding splinters. You can leave a house, but the walls stay inside you. That's the thing they don't tell you. We pulled into the driveway. Porch lights were still on from earlier. I stepped inside, kicked off my boots, and walked to the kitchen without turning on more lights. The bag sat on the counter like it had followed me in. Eventually, I opened it. A photo album. Thick, worn leather. Smelled like the attic. Underneath it, a small folded piece of yellow-lined paper. I didn't recognize the handwriting at first. It wasn't the cursive she used on birthday cards. This was sharper, smaller, like she was trying not to feel anything when she wrote it. Some things you can't erase, no matter how hard you try. That was all it said. I flipped open the album. Page after page of me, a baby, a toddler, missing teeth, holding a baseball bat too big for me. Moments I barely remembered, some I never saw before. But then I noticed faces missing. Each time he appeared, my father, his face had been cut out. Not scribbled, not folded, not faded. Cut. A clean square of absence. It wasn't grief. It was a message. Benedict had walked in behind me. He didn't ask to see it, just leaned close. His hand rested on the edge of the counter. She wanted to remind you where you came from, he said. Not who you became. That landed deep. It wasn't a gift. It was a weapon dressed as nostalgia. And it worked. I stood there, flipping pages like they owed me answers. I remembered the Christmas in that one photo, red sweater, 7th grade, Mom handing me a candy cane and telling me not to smile with my teeth. Said it looked desperate. I remember the peppermint, the faint smoke from the fireplace, her hands dry and cold on my shoulders. You're too soft, Terrelyn. Softness breaks. I believed her. For a long time, I thought strength meant keeping your mouth shut. Thought silence meant survival. Truth is, you inherit silence like you inherit eye color. The last few pages of the album were mostly blank, like there was no story worth telling after I turned 18. But tucked behind the last page was something else, a plain white envelope, legal-looking. I opened it slowly. An old copy of my father's life insurance policy. Verlin listed as sole beneficiary. Just her name. I remember being told, once, that my name was on it. I remember Dad saying, "This will help you one day." But here it was, black and white, no trace of me. Benedict's hand curled into a fist. So she didn't just shut the door, he muttered. She locked the vault. I nodded, not in agreement, just acknowledgement. Money wasn't the betrayal. It was proof that she'd decided I didn't count. Not then, not now. She didn't cut me out of the photos. She cut me out of the story. And still I couldn't let it go. Not yet. I picked up the pieces of the red mug, the ones I'd brought back, careful not to leave them on her porch like broken offerings. I wrapped them in a towel and placed them in the bag, next to the photos, the note, the policy. If she left me pieces, I'll find out why. I walked into the study, pulled up my laptop, and dialed the number listed for Dad's old attorney. The voicemail clicked on. Thank you for calling the office of Raymond Dell. Please note, the file you're requesting was recently accessed and logged. If you have further inquiries, leave your name and call back. Recently accessed? I hung up without leaving a message. And just stood there. Because suddenly, it wasn't about old wounds. It was about someone else poking around in the dark, and I needed to know who. I replayed the voicemail 3 times before sunrise. Each time, the same words hit harder. The file you're requesting was recently accessed. Recently, by someone else. The clock on the stove read 5:42 a.m. I hadn't slept. My mind kept circling the same question. Who else would care about my father's file? It wasn't curiosity that kept me awake. It was the kind of unease that hides under your skin. Benedict came downstairs, hair still messy, voice low. You're still on that? I nodded, half distracted. They said someone already asked for the file. A week ago. Before I even thought about it. He rubbed his jaw. Probably a clerical mistake. We'll call when they open. But I couldn't wait for office hours. I'd waited years for answers I didn't even know I needed. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the absence of lies. By 7:30, I was dressed and standing by the door with my coat zipped. Snow had stopped falling, but everything outside looked washed out, too quiet. Benedict offered to come, but I shook my head. Some ghosts you have to face alone. The lawyer's office was in an old brick building downtown. The kind that still smelled like dust and paper. The receptionist looked up when I walked in, older woman, neat bun, half-suspicious smile. I called last night, I said. About my father's file. Nathan Huxley. She hesitated, then reached for a binder. Her fingers stopped mid-page. It was opened last week, she said, voice dropping. Signed out by that's strange. It says V. Caro. My mother's maiden name. I didn't say anything for a moment. Just let the chill work its way through my chest. Is that allowed? She frowned. It shouldn't be. We only release files to listed family or authorized representatives. You said your mother's name is Verlin? Yes, I said. And she hasn't gone by Caro in 40 years. The woman exhaled slowly. Then someone used her identity. She showed me part of a form, blacked out lines, fragments of text. Enough to catch one phrase. Property transfer, rural parcel, Lake County. Below it was a name I hadn't heard in decades. Harold Bridger. Do you know him? She asked. I nodded, almost to myself. I used to. On the drive home, I tried to remember the last time I'd heard that name. I was 16, maybe 17. Harold wasn't family, but he used to visit often. My dad called him a friend. Mom called him, that man. He'd bring me notebooks, old coins, and once, a letter of recommendation he said he'd write when I applied to college. Then one summer, he disappeared. That night, I remembered the shouting. My father's voice, sharp, desperate. A deal's a deal, Verlin. And her reply, not when you're giving her away. Back then, I didn't understand. I thought it was about me staying out too late, or grades, or another missed dinner. But now, I could almost hear what wasn't said. Harold wasn't an uncle. He was something else, a link to whatever my father was trying to protect. Mom once told me, some offers are traps in niece wrapping. I thought she meant people like Harold. Now, I wondered if she was warning me, or excusing herself. I spent the rest of the afternoon searching through the boxes in the garage. My father's toolbox was still there, buried under old tarps and paint cans. When I lifted the lid, everything smelled like oil and thyme. At the bottom was an envelope. Yellowed, labeled in faded ink, Bridger 1994. Inside was a property deed, folded twice, and a letter never mailed. My father's handwriting, clean, deliberate. If anything happens to me, protect her share. Her, that was me. My throat went dry. My hands shook, but not from sadness. It was the quiet kind of anger that doesn't burn, it hardens. Dad tried to make sure I'd be okay. And someone, maybe the same woman who slammed a door in my face, made sure I'd never see it. When Benedict came home, I didn't tell him right away. I sat at the table with the letter in front of me, reading it again. He leaned over, eyes scanning the page. She didn't just cut you off, Terrelyn. She rewrote history. I closed the envelope carefully. I've mourned the loss of truth long enough. After dinner, I went upstairs, pulled out my laptop, and typed Harold Bridger's name. The search results loaded slowly, one by one. Obituary. 2 years ago. Passed peacefully at 78. I kept scrolling. A property record. The same rural parcel, but the owner listed wasn't Harold anymore. It was transferred last year to someone named R.V. Garrett. Garrett. The name meant nothing, but the initials felt deliberate, like another layer of someone else's game. And just like that, the trail wasn't cold, it was buried. I leaned back, staring at the screen, hearing my mother's voice in my head. Some things you can't erase. Maybe not, but you can dig them up. The house was quiet when I got home, the kind of quiet that lets your thoughts echo. I set the photo album and the legal documents on the kitchen counter. The bag felt heavier now than when I first picked it up. I opened the small box I'd kept from earlier and gently placed the broken red cup pieces inside. Funny how something so simple, ceramic, could outlast years of silence. The radio played softly from the corner. An old Bing Crosby tune. I'll be home for Christmas. I let it play even though it stung. I stood there a moment, watching the snowfall out the window, remembering something my dad once said while fixing the roof after a storm. It's not the storm that defines a house, it's how you rebuild after. That stuck. Because I knew now, I wasn't done digging. The voicemail, the deed, the photos, they weren't just relics, they were clues, and I was tired of leaving my own history unclaimed. I flipped the photo album open, just to see if anything else had been tucked away. That's when I found it. The page near the back held a family Christmas portrait. Everyone was there. My mother, my aunts, cousins, their kids. My seat, though, was filled with a wreath. Not a blur, not a blank space, a decorative pine wreath, edited into place like I'd never existed. The background behind it, the tree lights, the mantel clock, remained untouched. Her hand was resting above it, just slightly hovering. Not missing, removed. I wasn't even surprised, more like numb. That was always the trick, wasn't it? Convince people you'd never been part of the picture to begin with. I used to think being present meant I belonged. Holidays, birthdays, graduations, I showed up, I smiled, I clapped. But showing up doesn't mean you're seen. And being seen doesn't mean you're kept. I closed the album slowly. My fingers rested on the fabric of the cover longer than necessary. Something inside me pulled tight, but it didn't break. Later that evening, Benedict and I went to the winter charity gala. We'd been helping fund it through our foundation, mostly anonymously. I didn't plan on staying long, just enough to be polite. As we walked past the auction tables, I heard someone behind me ask, "Ma'am, do you know where the coat check is?" I turned. A young woman, maybe college-aged, cocktail dress, clipboard in hand. She thought I was staff. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at her, looked at the others nearby, the way a few eyes turned and flicked away. Like they couldn't decide if I was worth noticing. It wasn't the question that stung. It was the assumption. Before I could say anything, Benedict stepped forward. Calm, collected. "We're not staying. Thank you." He offered me his arm, and I took it without a word. We walked out slow, unbothered, but my chest burned. It wasn't about status. It was about being invisible in a room I helped build. Back home, I walked straight to the kitchen, opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I started typing. To the Verlin Corp. Board. I am requesting full transparency regarding my financial share and standing. Documentation, voting rights, disbursements. I require a full audit. This is not a request for favor. This is a claim of right. I hit save but didn't send it. Not yet. I looked over at the small box with the red cup shards. They sat there, sharp, still. "I'll be seen," I whispered. "Before I'm ever paid, I'll be seen." My phone buzzed. I glanced over. Unknown caller. ID. Verlin Corporate Office. I let the phone ring out in my hand, watching the screen until it went black. No voicemail. No context. Just a call labeled Verlin Corporate Office, and a voice that didn't belong. A woman, calm, detached, almost bored, had said, "Some things should stay buried, Terilyn. You know that." Then the line went dead. I played the voicemail again. And again. 5 times. On the 5th listen, I heard it, faint, behind her words, holiday music. "Rockin' around the Christmas tree." That tune only plays in lobbies, retail stores, diners. Somewhere public. I called the Verlin Corporation office myself. The receptionist sounded young, confused. "No, ma'am, we don't have your name in the inquiry system. And no one from this office made a call to you. Are you sure it was us?" Was I? I looked down at my call log. Same number as the one on their website. That's when the chill settled. It wasn't just secrets. It was active silencing. The next day, I met Belinda at a little diner off the highway. Same neon sign that buzzed since we were kids. Same cracked vinyl booths. She arrived already flustered, smoothing her coat and eyes darting like she hoped I'd cancel before she sat down. "Belinda," I said gently, "I don't want to catch up. I want the truth." She shifted in her seat. "Your mom, she made decisions. We all had to adjust." That word again, adjust. Like I was just a setting on the thermostat everyone had to deal with. I leaned in. Did she take something from me? Her eyes flicked to the window, then to her coffee, then to me. She intercepted a letter. 2005. It had Harold Bridger's name on the envelope. I wasn't supposed to see it, but I was doing mail sort. It was meant for you. My chest tightened. What did it say? There was talk of a trust. Something set up by Harold. It said you'd be eligible when you turned 30. I turned 35 years ago. I never saw a cent. That wasn't oversight. That was theft, with planning. I left the diner without touching my sandwich. The sky had clouded over, dull gray pressing on the rooftops like unfinished business. Back home, I went straight to my father's box. Old manila folders, receipts, handwritten notes, and then, at the very bottom, a thin envelope marked in all caps, "Do not trust her." Inside, a draft will amendment. Unsigned, but typed clearly. 50% of business interest to Terrelyn, upon proof of her independence. He hadn't trusted my loyalty. Maybe thought I'd sold it to my mother, traded it in for proximity and approval. He was wrong, but he tried. That document was his apology. Quiet, late, but real. I sat down at my desk. My laptop lit up with a cold blue glare. I typed slowly, deliberately. To Marcus Bell, attorney. Subject: proceed with formal inquiry. I'm ready. Initiate full legal examination into all trusts, shares, and holdings connected to Thomas W. Garrett. Include inquiry into obstruction by any Verlin affiliates. I pressed send. A ping echoed through the room barely a minute later. The reply was swift. Marcus, did you ever receive a key labeled W.21? It appears in an asset note from 2003. My breath caught. The tiny brass key inside the broken red ceramic cup. I had set it aside without thinking. I stood, walked down the hallway, opened the drawer where I kept it. The label, W.21. He didn't just leave me a gift. He left me a way out. And I'd never once asked what door it opened. The email showed up just after sundown. Crisp, formal, void of warmth, just like them. Meeting at 7 p.m., conference room A Verlin corporate. No pleasantries, no explanation. I sat for a while, staring at it. Was it an invitation or a warning? Outside, the snow had started again. Light at first, then steadier. It dusted the sidewalks and caught the glow of the city lights, making everything look cleaner than it really was. I arrived early. The building stood tall and sterile, a fortress of glass and cold steel. The kind of place that said, you can look, but you don't belong. I walked through the lobby without slowing, took the elevator up, and stepped into the boardroom. It smelled like filtered air and plastic polish. Everything gleamed, but it didn't feel alive. 2 nameplates were already set on the long conference table. One read, Geraldine Long. The other? Nothing. Mine used to sit at the end, right beside my father's. Gone. A junior assistant, nervous, gestured toward a side table near the restroom door. We thought you might prefer somewhere with quick access, just in case. The table overlooked a janitor's closet. I sat without flinching. Others filed in, talking about weather, golf, real estate. I caught glances but no hellos. They knew why I was there. And they were hoping to watch me fold. The meeting started with a glossy presentation. A younger executive, fresh suit, not an ounce of sweat on his palms, clicked through slides titled, 2023 Highlights. Then came one that made my stomach lurch. Breakthrough Project, Long Family Ventures, the screen announced. Photos filled the screen, my site plans, my team, my designs. And yet, beneath it all, the caption, Visionary, Geraldine Long. I stood. The room went still. Excuse me, I said calmly. Would you like to credit the architect behind those drawings? Murmurs, shifts in chairs. I pulled up an email thread on my tablet, dated 5 years ago, with my name in the file paths and drafts. I scrolled through them slowly, turning my screen toward the group. They rewrote history, I said quietly. But I kept the receipts. Nobody spoke. When the meeting wrapped, everyone filed out like they hadn't just watched a family member get erased from her own work. I stayed behind, my fingers laced together on the table. Then I said, out loud, without raising my voice, I will not serve at the side table any longer. I will sit at the head, or I will walk away. I reached for my phone, opened my legal folder, and tapped out a new message to my lawyer. Effective immediately. Initiate a formal audit of all Verlin Corporation holdings. Notify the board I am exercising full shareholder rights. Send. I leaned back, watching the snow drift past the window. Every flake moving on its own path. No two alike. I whispered, neither is my voice. I stood, wrapped my coat around me, and walked back to the elevator. The lobby was nearly empty now, a hush falling over the building as the snow piled higher outside. Just as I stepped onto the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. One message. Unknown number. You crossed the line. Now you'll see how you regret it. I sat at my desk, the one I never replaced after Dad passed. Thick oak, corner worn, papers stacked and spilling from cardboard boxes I dragged down from the attic that morning. The house was quiet, snow tapping faintly at the windows. Off to the right, the broken red cup still sat in its box. That thing had outlived every excuse I made for her. When I pulled the envelope from between two tax folders, I almost missed the words inked in caps across the front. Do not trust her. I knew the handwriting. Dad's. Shaky near the end, but still his. Inside, a single page. No signature. But the language? Pure him. An amendment to his will, 50% of his business shares, allocated to me. Upon demonstration of independent stewardship. Independent stewardship. I sat back. So he had believed in me. He just never said it. Not out loud. All those years I spent keeping the family name clean, making sacrifices, being the one to step aside for harmony, and he thought I was soft. Too sensitive, he'd say. You can't run a company with feelings. But here it was. He saw something. He just didn't live long enough to put ink where his mouth was. And now the one person who'd made sure that paper never saw light of day was the same one wearing his ring and holding the trust like a trophy. Something shifted in me, like a lens finally coming into focus. I wasn't the one being kept out. I was the one being silenced. And I was done playing polite. That afternoon, I met with Marcus and Belinda at the law office. I handed the document over, watched their expressions change as they read. This was filed in 2016, Marcus said, almost whispering. But it wasn't executed. No signature. Belinda leaned in. So, what does that mean legally? He looked at me. It means they knew. And they buried it. I didn't flinch. Then we dig it back up. I called Verlin's lawyer on the spot. Calm tone. Measured. Like I was just asking about a lunch meeting. Ms. Garrett, I don't know where you got that, he said. But it's a draft. Not binding. You'd be wasting your time contesting it. Good, I said, because I have time. I hung up. That night, I showed up at the gallery. One of those fundraisers with wine that tastes like floor cleaner and paintings that look like mistakes. Verlin was already there, glowing under the spotlights like she owned them. When she saw me, her face softened into something rehearsed. Darling, she cooed, you came. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I pulled out the letter and held it up. Do you acknowledge what this is? She glanced at it, quick and sharp. Then looked past me, smiling like cameras were rolling. That's an old draft, sweetheart. Nothing more. I stepped closer. It's enough. For the first time, I saw her hesitate. One blink too long. One breath she forgot to take. She turned her back like the matter was dismissed, but her shoulder twitched when I walked away. That's how you know the mask cracked. Back home, the house was dark. The fire had burned out. I sat at my desk, the letter back in its envelope, laptop screen blank in front of me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. Just a photo. Dad's old toolbox, open. Label inside. W.21. The caption. Back off or this goes public differently. No name. No voice. But the message? Clear as glass. I sat there, unmoving. Not from fear. From calculation. They didn't just want me quiet. They wanted the past scrubbed clean. I reached for the red cup box. Snapped a picture. Sent it back with a message. I kept the pieces. Are you sure you want to break more things? No response. Didn't need one. By morning, I was already on the road. The snow had come heavy, laying thick across the back roads. I took it slow, the heat from the vents barely cutting the chill. The estate came into view like a memory, too big, too cold, too quiet. I parked beside the stone steps, boots crunching on the ice as I made my way to the side entrance. This place still held secrets. You could feel it in the floorboards. Just as I reached the library doors, my phone buzzed again. Secure line. Law firm. A man's voice, smooth and tired. We have the signed paperwork. We'll see you Thursday at court. I didn't respond right away. Just looked at the massive wooden doors in front of me. They gave me a seat at the table, I said, more to myself than to him. Now I'll decide where I sit. The call ended. I turned the knob, stepped into the library, and let the door close behind me. The cabinets loomed tall and silent, old as the lies they held. I wasn't scared of the dark anymore. The driveway was coated in white, the snow silent under my tires. I drove up to the estate again, under the tall windows of the library that glowed like a cathedral among the dark trees. The scent of Wednesday dusk, old wood, and quiet secrets pressed around me as I pushed through the heavy front door. I'd waited years for this room, the one where I'd once sat with Dad, listening to his plans, dreaming of belonging. Now I came for the records they hid. They called me missing. I showed up to find out why their files don't. I turned the brass key, the one marked W21, in the lock of a cabinet with a small plaque. The door clicked open. A ring-bound folder stared back, titled Long Family Tribute and Holdings 2000 to 2024. My heart pounded like a drum. Inside, I found the scanned email from 2015 where Dad named me equal partner. I found the notarized land transfer of 2018 that changed hands without my consent. I closed the folder, raised it for everyone in the boardroom, Verlin, Geraldine, the trustees, all seated in the library of their legacy. I stood firm. You can alter a chair at the head of the table, but not erase the person who built it. My voice echoed in the room. The faces shifted. The power changed. I wasn't a footnote anymore. Later I entered the gala they arranged, lights, glass, applause. On the big screen, the Long family legacy. My name wasn't there. My image wasn't there. I stood in the center of the room, holding the folder, as cameras snapped. The gasp rose before the applause could fall. The moment felt larger than me, and I embraced it. I'm the legacy you forgot, I said quietly, so only those closest heard. My legs shook for a heartbeat, but I walked through the stunned guests, collecting silence like proof of presence. Back home, winter's hush followed me up the stairs. I opened the box with the red cup shards. Among them I found the flash drive Dad left, the brass key, and his voice recorded, "If they ever claim you weren't built for this, you remind them who taught you how to build." I pressed play. The room filled with his strength. I no longer felt overlooked. I felt prepared. I typed to my lawyer, "Execute the audit. Freeze the trust until equal treatment is clear." Outside the window the snow drifted. I thought. I walked through there cold so they could feel it. Now I will light the fire. My phone pinged. Court date set for Monday. Your presence is mandatory. I didn't flinch. The courthouse steps were slick with last night's ice, and I walked them alone just after sunrise. No entourage, no family, just me and my breath fogging the air in small, steady clouds. Inside, the marble halls carried the weight of 100 years of arguments and verdicts. But I wasn't here to fight anymore, I was here to close a door, finally. When the clerk called my name, it echoed louder than I expected. The courtroom wasn't packed, but every seat held someone whose presence meant something. Verlin sat stiff, lips pursed like she was tasting regret. Geraldine wouldn't meet my eye. Our attorneys shuffled papers with rehearsed grace, but I didn't need a script. I knew what this day was. This wasn't about revenge. It never was. It was about putting to rest the version of me they tried to write out of the story. I remembered Eleanor Roosevelt's line, plain as day, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." I stopped giving mine. The judge was calm but precise. She walked through the timeline, the trust documents, the altered clauses, and the moments where fiduciary duty slipped into manipulation. When she ruled in my favor, reinstating my full rights and ordering back pay, the room stayed quiet. Geraldine shoved her chair back and stormed out. Verlin didn't move, her head lowered, hands folded too neatly in her lap. Outside, the air bit my skin, but I didn't feel cold. Just clear, like something unwrapped from around my chest and floated off into the frozen morning. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silence when everyone leaves the room. Weeks later, I found myself walking through the family estate with a different kind of purpose. No more checking locks or watching my back. The attic held boxes labeled in my grandfather's handwriting, for Nora. There were letters, recipes, notes, my birth bracelet, things no one had told me existed. I sorted through them slow, quiet. Some I donated to the family archive. Some I kept, not because I needed to prove anything, but because they were mine. I didn't want to own the legacy. I wanted to honor it. I stood by the library window, snow falling outside, and felt something I hadn't in years, peace. That Maya Angelou quote came back to me, and I let it settle in my chest. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. Time passed. I moved downtown to a smaller place, closer to my work. I started mentoring younger women, those who'd been erased, passed over, told they didn't belong. One of them called me, the quiet heir who spoke loud. I smiled when I heard that. I used to whisper my worth. Now I speak it like gospel. A clip from that Christmas gala, me standing with the folder in front of the slideshow, had gone viral. I didn't ask for it, but it found its way out there. That moment did something. It gave people like me a mirror. Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself, I tell the girls now. Keep fighting for your dreams. This morning, I sat at my desk, coffee in hand, sorting through mail. Bills, thank you notes, then a letter, handwritten, no return address. I held it in my palm for a long moment. It was from someone I never thought I'd hear from again.